Yeah.
All right, a very good afternoon to you wherever you joined us. Of course, it's could be morning wherever you are. So we're very conversant of the fact that our audience is not just in West Africa, where I am in Lagos, Nigeria, but from all over the world. Welcome to the SIGA Sports Integrity Week, and we're excited to be doing that. And SIGA is Sports Integrity Global Alliance. This is the Sports Integrity Week, and we're glad to be doing this session with them, powered by the Initiative for Development Through Sports. That's the hosting partner of this session for the SIGA Sports Integrity Week. My name is Sayo, Owolabi, and I'm glad to be moderating this session. It definitely promises to be an enlightening one, considering the savvy panel we've got as a set of panelists we've got on this session, where we'll be discussing building a culture of integrity, strengthening sports laws and regulation in Africa. And where else should we be strengthening sports laws than Africa to a very large extent? And I'm smiling because of the experience our Super Eagles had with the Libyans just recently, and we're hoping that such would not be the case on our continent. We can all live together and get things done. But we saw the law take its full course, and even though the offended party may not like the outcome, they definitely have a chance to seek redress. Which is the beauty of the law. It doesn't just end on one portal. You can open another portal. But most importantly, what matters the most is keeping pace with integrity, which is where we can then maintain the prestige and, of course, the chastity of the sports, the game. Everyone would be given the best, knowing that they're back on the sanctity of the laws. It's been an interesting week for me, and it's so strange that while I was going through social media, especially LinkedIn, I started seeing a lot about integrity in the course of the week, and it alluded to the fact that when you have something set before you, almost everything looks like that particular thing. And I saw a particular quote from Maurice Chung, the founder of Taiwan Semiconductor. It had to do with integrity, not in sports, but integrity generally. And he says, integrity means honesty and willingness to fulfill a promise even at high cost. So it means that it may not be convenient, but because your word is your bond, and I know I have a few lawyers on this panel, because your word is your bond, you just know that you have to go the full hog when it comes to integrity. Well, I'm not the one that will be doing most of the talking. I've got a survey panel, like I said earlier on, and I'll be doing a quick introduction of them now, starting with the ladies. I start with the first person, Fahmida Faiza. She's the founder of Alliance for Safe Space. Hi, Fahmida. Welcome to the session. And share your initial thoughts. What should we expect? Tell us more about yourself, maybe in just about 30 seconds, 1 minute, and what we should expect.
Thanks, Sayo, and thanks for all the audience who has joined us from across the world. I am Fahmida Faiza. I'm born and raised in Bangladesh, but I'm educated in Europe and currently based in Africa, in Morocco, to be specific, north of Africa. By educational qualification, I'm a British barrister. After doing my bar, I was working full-time as the head of safeguarding and social responsibility at South Asian Football Federation, where I had the privilege to pioneer safeguarding for 7 countries in South Asian sports through football. And currently, I lead my organization, which is Alliance for Safe Space, which is a practitioner's voice in safe sport and creates that peer support for all the safeguarding professionals, which is largely a big part of the sports integrity and the values that we are going to share more later in this webinar. Thanks to ID Sports for the invite and Adiola, and thanks to you, Sayo. Over to you.
All right, thank you so much for me. That's a loaded CV did, and all the great stuff you've done with safeguarding sports. Thank you so much. Next panelist is Khayran Noor. It's the first time we're doing a panel together, but I've known her for a while on the social media space. We haven't met in person, but I'm sure that will happen soon. Khayran is an international sports law consultant. Khayran, welcome to the session. Tell us a bit more about yourself, briefly, and what to expect.
Thank you, Sayo, and thank you to SIGA and IDS for having us today. Of course, a special thank you to Adiola for the invite. Well, I'm not as decorated as Fahmida, but I'll just, again, keep it brief. By Sayo. I'm a sports lawyer by specialization. I'm based in Nairobi. I'm an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and international arbitrator as well, qualified under the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators in the UK. Yeah, studied in Kenya, live in Kenya, currently based in Nairobi. And I mean, I'm looking forward to this very timely and I know for Africa context, a very important subject. So I look forward to adding my 2 cents to this and also listening in from the other panelists. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Khayran. Thank you. And let's move to the big man in the house. Jeremiah Haruna joins us as one of the panelists. Also, is an athletics and soccer coach with the Nigeria Customs Service. And I'm wondering, how do you blend coaching athletics with soccer? Would your players not be running, the soccer players now be running out of the field, forgetting that it was football? Just saying. Hi, Jeremiah.
All right. Good afternoon, Sayo.
Good afternoon.
It's good to have me here this afternoon to talk about sports integrity. Like you said, I am Jeremiah Haruna. I'm a coach of Nigeria Sports and Nigeria Customs Service. You asked how I combine soccer and athletics. Yeah, I was once a professional track and field athlete and also a professional footballer. So I did some coaching in athletics and also in soccer. So presently, working in soccer as an athletics coach, I work mostly on the fitness aspect of the footballer.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. So now I get it. I get it. They will run within the confines of the field.
Yes. All right.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I studied human kinetics from the University of Illinois. An ex-athlete of the school, Nuga champion also in athletics, also in soccer. Presently, I work with the Nigerian Customs Service as a sports coach. Presently, I don't work just as a soccer and athletics coach alone. I work in most aspects when it comes to management of sports in Nigeria Customs. So that's what I do presently. I'm really looking forward to a great show today to learn from our panelists and also share my little idea that I have about sports integrity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeremiah. And finally, last but not the least, is Owolabi. Is a FIFA licensed football agent. He's an entrepreneur and, of course, FFO Soccer Agency. Hi, Owolabi. Welcome to the session. Tell us a bit more about yourself and what to expect.
Yeah, good day, guys. Just like you said, my name is Owolabi. I've been into sport for a while. I had a short stint with professionally playing soccer. Played in Africa, played in Nigeria professional league with a few clubs. Then before I moved to South Africa, played with Bidvest and TS Sporting and a few more clubs in South Africa before I moved to Europe to have a short stint with Sparta Moscow. Then after a while, I played in a few countries in Europe, and I'm retired now, happily, and I'm a FIFA licensed agent. So I'm going to be talking about how important the sport laws and integrity is to African young boys and girls, and to me, this actually means a lot. I have put a lot of things in place in my head, and for somebody that plays soccer in Africa, I know what this means. So trust me, it's a good program, and I'm looking forward to whatever. I know this is going to be very informative and very, very good session.
Thank you, Eli. By any chance, did you play for? All right, thank you, Eli. By any chance, did you play for Shooting Stars of Ibadan?
I played for Sunshine Stars.
Oh no, that's the inferior one. That's the bigger one. Anyways, thank you.
I'm from your state, so playing in your state, you don't get recognized. I prefer to come and score them, hate them, and they know me.
I totally understand. It's not a problem. Thank you so much. Of course, Shooting Stars, good club out there in Akure. Ondo State. All right, guys, thank you so much to our panelists, and thanks to all the guys who have joined us. We will be delving straight into it right now. We'll take our initial thoughts from our panelists this beautiful afternoon. And the first question is, in your view, what does sports integrity mean in the African context? And why is it particularly important for the continent's sports ecosystem? We'll start with Fahmida, we'll go to Khayran, we'll go to Jeremiah, wrap up with Eli on this. So, Fahmida, your thought. Sports integrity, what it means for the African context.
Yeah, so I think I would start with quite an outsider's perspective, I would say, rather, because I am not an African by origin, but currently being based in here and quite exposed to the culture. And as an expert's perspective, I can give more an outsider look, and I think the other panelists are here well qualified to give an insider perspective, right? So from what my understanding is that there is this global standard for ethics and integrity that exists in the area of sport. And when we talk about integrity, it is quite deeply ingrained to the morals, values, or the fair play, the very essence of sport, which is to create an equal ground, an equal opportunity for everyone. Because without the integrity, there is no, the very purpose of sport is not defined. In my understanding, or from the practical experience of integrity, what I have seen, that it is not just, you cannot identify one particular element that this is integrity, because if you have to say that you have to ensure fair play, you have the concept of fair play goes with every part of the game, right? So it's very hard to isolate the concept of integrity. It's very much intertwined to the very fabric of the concept or the essence of sport. So that's why I think, in my opinion, sport integrity is something so fundamental, so crucial, yet often so sidelined, because all eyes are on the cup. We only care about winning the cup and not so much about playing the game right. So I think a lot of the perspectives are changing in Africa. From an African perspective, I could say that the first exposure when I was watching the CAF Women's Champions League, I saw the laser pointing on the goalkeeper when the penalty shootout was happening. And that was one of the major defining moment of the game. But these kind of interruptions, these kind of things make you think that how safe the game is and how much are we ensuring the safety, security, integrity, and all of those critical matters that really makes or breaks the game. So I would let the other panelists to have their thoughts on it, but just really to summarize that sports integrity is the very essence of the game, and you can't really pinpoint just one part of it. It's really deeply integrated to every aspect of the game.
Thank you so much, Fahmida. Khayran, your thoughts?
Yeah, maybe just to add on what Fahmida's very eloquently, described. Again, you cannot pinpoint on one thing when it comes to integrity. And I'm saying this because I don't want to narrow it down mainly to the African context, because I feel like integrity ethics it's an international standard and everyone is upheld by that. So we're talking about issues to do with fairness, she's already said, fair play, accountability, transparency, good governance, good leadership in sports, and investment and proper use of resources when it comes to sports development. But then maybe just to summarize, I feel like, generally we know sports is a very powerful cohesion tool, and it's a sort of entertainment as well. And then as time has gone by, and this is something we'll delve on later, it's become an economic source as well. And it builds national identity. So I feel like integrity, has to ensure that governance decisions and values shaping sports are sound, impartial, and consistently applied across the board. And again, and I know with my panelists who have, sports background, being athletes or former players themselves, athletes form the core of sports. They're the fabric of sports. And without their dedication, sacrifices, and tireless pursuit of excellence, sports would not exist at all. So therefore, I mean, the individuals dedicate years in developing their talents, often in environments where resources are limited and support is minimal, not just in Africa, although in Africa it's very rampant, but we're talking about other areas such as, I mean, even in Europe, it's not just they're developed, so they have everything. But we're talking about the global south, and I mean, I think Fahmida can relate to this as well. So it's not unique to Africa only. But we need to recognize that laws, regulations, and leadership and good governance structures should be built with the athletes' welfare as a priority. And when integrity is upheld, athletes can perform with confidence that they're participating in fair competitions and their efforts are valued and protected. I think those would be my 2 cents on this, and I welcome the other panelists to add on to that.
Definitely valid points. Athletes are critical. I remember my days on radio. I focus more on the athletes than the administrators. You know, we get carried away as media on the African continent talking more about the administrators. But the athletes are the mainstay. If they're not there, there really isn't a game. So I totally agree with you. Next is Jeremiah. Jeremiah, your thoughts on the sports integrity in the African context? Is Jeremiah there? Okay, I think Jeremiah is not there. Can Oyelaya join? Share his thought?
Yeah, just
Oyelaya.
yeah, I'm here. I can hear very well, guys. Just like
Yes, please.
my fellow guys have explained, like fair competition, you know, it's not all about winning. Sometimes it's about sometimes, most times for me, I feel like the confidence of each athlete to be able to participate in their events is more important than just winning. And also corruption and free governance is another thing that I hold in a very big value. Then transparent and financial management. But most importantly, there's something that occurred when I transferred the player, and there's a rule that FIFA says that most people don't know. So when I transfer this player, the FIFA rule says that the parental clubs of each player are supposed to be given a fee. And do you even know that most clubs in Nigeria here and in Africa have no idea that there is a fee that FIFA have put in place? That FIFA have put in place that goes to a parental club of every player. So to me, the protection of athlete welfare is one of the most important things, because most clubs, most grassroots coaches have no idea that FIFA have put a rule, a law in place that even favors them. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, yes, we can. Yes, we can.
In such that by the time I moved this player and I called the coach, I said, this money goes to you. And when the player moves from another club to another club to another club, there's a money that drops down to you. The coach was so surprised. He was like, really? I said, yes, this money is not for me, it's yours. Because FIFA wants you to produce more players as talented as this boy that I just moved to the club. He was so surprised. So that's how much sports laws, governance, and integrity are important to both coaches, both athletes, and every administrator that is involved in sports in Africa. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Oyelaya. I think Jeremiah is back with us. Jeremiah, can you share your thoughts on the question? We lost you for a bit.
Yes, sorry about that. Network issues.
Please go on.
Okay, when we're talking about sports integrity in Africa, sports in itself, when there's no integrity, to me, there's no sport. Let me just in a layman's language, sports integrity means following the rules, regulations that ensures fair play, honesty, and transparency in sports. So if there is no, if sports integrity is not being put in place in sports, then it in itself, the whole sports cannot be called sports at all. Presently, I work with a grassroots soccer academy. I own it myself here in Abuja, Nigeria. And every year we organize competitions that has to do with age groups, under 10s, under 14s, and the likes. We go as much as making the coaches and the team owners bring the international passports of these kids that will play the tournament to ensure that there is no age cheating. Sports integrity in Africa, if we can tackle that, I think Africa will be one of the best places you could ever play sports and enjoy sports if we can tackle sports integrity. Now, when we're talking about sports integrity, there are some key components we'll look at. Fair play, honesty, ethics, corruption-free, respect, safety, and accountability. Where all these things come in play, then we can say sports in Africa will be at the top notch. At any level we can compete. So if we can embrace all these aspects, all these key components in sports integrity that we don't see presently in Africa, if we can embrace them, then sports integrity in Africa will be a thing of the past. We can be discussing about like this. We can only look forward to forging ahead on some other better aspects in sport. So that's my take on this.
All right.
About sports integrity.
Thank you.
That is sports in itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jeremiah. Very apt thoughts from our panelists for the initial question. Now, individual questions, and I'll go around the room starting with Khayran. Khayran, what role, and I'm talking governance and legal frameworks now, you play in the international sports law space, and the question is, what role do national and regional legal frameworks play in promoting sports integrity in Africa? How effective are existing sports laws been, and where do you see room for improvement? And yes, it may not be in its entirety. We know there are over 40 sports, so you may just touch on one or two that you've been, privy to being involved in. So that's the question, Khayran.
I think generally national and regional legal frameworks serve as the backbone of promoting sport integrity. And this is delivered by defining clear standards, expectation and enforcement and implementation mechanisms. So effective laws can protect athletes from exploitation, as we mentioned earlier, ensure fair resource distribution, clear accountability for sports leaders. However, I mean, we all know this, we all live in Africa, we've worked in this space. We know sports laws or regulations in Africa often fall short, either due to outdated regulations, lack of enforcement, political interference. And improvement areas include modernization of laws to meet global standards, strengthening enforcement bodies, and prioritizing transparency in sports administration. And maybe just to give an example, not that I've worked with this case particularly, but I would like to give the example of, say, now the Sports Act 2013 of Kenya. It was designed to overhaul sports governance and promote transparency. However, the implementation has faced hurdles. The Football Kenya Federation is notorious for scandals, and I think anyone who's paid attention to the football space is privy to this. Despite being subject to the act, it has been embroiled in corruption scandals, including allegations of misappropriation of FIFA funding meant for grassroots football development. And more often than not, when these cases happen, it's the athletes that suffer the consequences, facing a lack of infrastructure, minimal financial support, limited international exposure. So updating the Sports Act, particularly the Kenyan one, I know it's been worked on at the moment, but I still feel like there's more work that needs to be done. And ensuring independent enforcement would protect Kenyan athletes and interest and resource confidence in the system, especially when it comes to putting these leaders and governing bodies that fall short to this with dire consequences, because I think that's also an area that is lacking, in as much as most of the time they might be proved to have, broken these integrity rules and regulations, but you still see them serving in leadership roles and continuing serving in their respective, governing bodies, or they move on to other sports and they continue with this corruption and mismanagement and poor leadership and governance. So I think would be my takeaways on this question. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Khayran. Of course, the news from the Kenyan football, like you said, definitely emerged as a surprise. Looking at the country Kenya and the level of respect and stuff from across the continent, but then we're sure that things will be cleaned out and things will get better with the Kenyan Federation. And of course, it's not even a case in isolation. We have other countries that have not been brought to the fore, and they only just become like shocking information when they are put out there. Sticking with the governance and legal frameworks, and this time I'm coming to you, Elayo. And the question is, the African Union and the regional sports bodies like the Confederation of African Football, CAF, have been, pushing for stronger regulations. In your opinion, what has been the impact so far, and what more can they do to ensure sports governance in Africa adheres to international best practices? And for me, the key word here is international best practices, because sometimes you begin to wonder the disconnect between our administrators on the continent and the level of things happening on the international space. I have stories about this to tell, So, Elia, what would be that thing that would help us move to do things at the international best practices level?
Thank you very much. Actually, first of all, I will still want to appreciate CAF for a few things that they have done in terms of governance reforms, because they reduced the time limits that most CAF presidents have had. Like, let me give you an example of if I had to spend like 29 years and 6 days from 1988 to 2017.
Yeah.
Nekachu of Tesema spent 15 years at the office being the CAF president. Abdel Aziz Mustafa spent 10 years from 1958 to 1968. He was from Egypt. He spent so much, like 10 years. So CAF have really done a very good work in reducing the number of years that presidents use in their tenure. The present CAF president now, Mosepe from South Africa, is about to finish his first tenure, which is 4 years. Which for me, that's a very good one. CAF did a good job there. And also, they worked on capacity building by training most professionals that into sport, like administrators, referees, coaches. They do that often. They give coaches refresher courses, like the one that just happened like this year. They just concluded African Schools Football Championship. They held a 2 days refresher course for young referees, years below 25 years. They did a very good course for them. It happened in Zanzibar in Tanzania. Very good one by CAF. And in other words, just like you said, that one of the most important things that we should talk about is how they can link up to the international level. They've been doing a lot of, I think they've been doing a lot of work, but they should improve more on the technology. Technology integration is very, very important, because when you look at, even when we're presently, European countries are playing, VAR is being used. In CAF Champions League football, VAR is not there. Even the clubs playing in Champions League in Nigeria, they don't even have a VAR facility. That's not good enough. And also, they should encourage inter-regional collaborations within African countries and even abroad. That is very, very important. They should work more on that. And they should improve on the capacity building. They are trying more on the capacity, but they should do more on it. So from my hand, I think these are the few things that they've done, and I think that they should improve more on it. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Oyelai. I particularly agree with you on the place of VAR, especially on the continent. It's well overdue, and we know this as some of even in say the Premier League, and we can bring it to 4, where the VAR is being deployed. There are still questions about the integrity of referees. So you can imagine what's happening here, where there's even no backup in terms of the technology that can support this thing. So I definitely agree with you on that. And moving to the next question, and this goes to Jeremiah. And this time we're talking about combating corruption and match fixing, which I know you definitely have an inkling about. Let's talk about match fixing and other forms of corruption. They remain a serious issue in some African sports. What measures are currently in place to tackle this? And can African nations improve their ability to detect and punish match fixing activities?
Right. Thank you, Sayo. Yeah, match fixing and corruption are a serious threat to the integrity of African sport. Match fixing and corruption, a serious threat to the integrity of African sport. So presently, what is in place from what I study for the key initiatives the African Union is having about combating this, there are integrity units in different sports organizations like FIFA. There are integrity units in organization of ICC, International Cricket Confederation, if I'm right. So African Sports Association are in collaboration with all these international bodies presently. They work hand in hand to ensure that match fixing and other forms of corruption are eradicated from our sport. Now, they have monitoring and education. It plays a good role. We need to educate our sports administrators. We need to make them know that it's not the win at all costs. Sports shouldn't be a win at all costs endeavor. You play, you show yourself, you do what you need to do on the field of play, and if you come out victorious, fine. If you lose the match, you go prepare for the next match so that you come out better. So we need to work on that education and monitoring aspect, which is also in place. There's also a legislation and policy. The Council of European Convention on the Manipulation of Sports, 2004, provides a framework for preventing, dictating, and sanctioning match manipulations. Now, talking about the second aspect of the question, what can African nations do to improve their ability to detect and punish match fixing? Now, we need to strengthen governance. Strengthen government in the sense that ensure good governance practice, such as timely payment of players. If you don't pay these players on time, some of those players will go fix matches themselves. So we need to ensure that officials pay these players on time. They also reduce the vulnerability of corruption when it comes to sports. We should also enhance monitoring. We know monitoring is in place at this point, but we should enhance it by implementing effective monitoring system to detect suspicious betting patterns. Now, this is where we have to go work hand in hand with all these betting organizations. They influence it a lot, especially in Africa. It was working a lot in India when it comes to cricket. Betting organizations go fix matches, manipulate the pitches and all, so that a particular team they want to win can win. But now all these things are being reduced. So we need to involve technological aspect. We need to involve technology to combat match fixing. I think in Africa, we're not doing a lot when it comes to technology and sports. We need to work more with the technological aspect to combat match fixing. Now, there was an issue that happened some years ago in Africa. I believe a lot of us knows about this story, about some sport officials in Africa. I won't mention names now, that were suspended. Some of them were even banned from sport entirely because of match fixing issues. So one of the main things we can do in Africa to combat this is to ensure stiffer measures when it comes to the punishment. My brother was saying something about some sports officials that were punished, were jailed for some years. We need to ensure, and we'll do that, follow it to the letter. One mistake we make in Africa is this: when we say this is the consequence for this offense, sometimes we overlook it and we allow some big guns work over these measures. But if we can be serious about it and work hand in hand with international bodies like FIFA and the likes to ensure that this punishment have been ensured to the latter, I believe it will help us solve this issue about match fixing and other forms of corruption in African sports. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeremiah. Very well captured indeed. And move on to Fahmida now. Fahmida, how do we ensure that athletes and stakeholders at all levels and that's from grassroots to the elite level, are educated on the importance of integrity and the risk of engaging in corruption, match fixing, and other unethical behaviors. Education is key. Education is important. It is when people know this thing. There's a quote that says, if you don't train them, don't blame them. So how do we ensure this education goes from the bottom right up onto the top of the echelon?
Thank you. That's actually a wonderful question. And that brings me to coining back to what my previous panelists were saying, because Khayran has given us a context of the problem, right? And Jeremiah has told us what needs to be done. Now, what needs to be done also exists in pen and paper. There are policies, regulations, there are action plans. We are seeing frameworks that are being published. This could be accessed in various websites. While we were speaking, I was going through the CAF integrity website, like CAF website, and when it comes to integrity part of the website, I could not find any, like there's a tab called integrity reports, and I could not find anything. Like if you go and click in the CAF website and go to the integrity reports, that's blank. So my question is, there can be so many policies that we can say that this needs to be done, that should be done. My question is two: who is going to do what needs to be done? Whose responsibilities? And how that is going to be done? Because when we say who is going to do that, it's like the people who are in the field of integrity, who are working as a professional, because I come from a practitioner's perspective. And from a practitioner's perspective, I can fairly say the people who are the whistleblowers are the first one to be threatened by the power dynamics that exist in the governance and administration system of sport. There is no way to protect someone who is protecting the game or protecting the values of the game. So if I today, as the integrity officer, talk about some corruption happening within the sport, the next thing, we all know what happens, and it just does not only happen in Africa, it happens in all across Asia, Africa, Latin America. It's a phenomenon, common phenomenon in Global South. So either your job is at stake or you are silenced through some other way, right? So we all know what happened. Now the question, so here comes the question, how we can ensure that effective sport integrity is ensured, especially in the African context, if we have to say. You can have all the policies and framework as much as you want. There is global policy, there is regional policy, there is African Union Sport Council, there is CAF bodies like governance, regulatory, Apple Committee, and all of that. All of these structure is there. Even for basketball, NBA Africa has quite a robust system and investment in Africa, right? But if you have to see how this needs to be done, the biggest challenge in Africa is the understanding. And that comes to hand in hand with the lack of resources. The educational program that is there, my question is how many people from Africa, considering the millions of population of the young people who are involved in the sports industry, how many people are taking the opportunity to watch this particular webinar and gonna come back on it to seek the expertise that how can I build my understanding and awareness on it? How many of them can get the certification? Because we have this common misconception that the education means you need to spend a lot of money. It's not true. There are many online, easily free of cost courses that is provided by the United Nations, by the Council of Europe, by all of these global international bodies that are completely free of cost. I have done FIFA safeguarding diploma in sport completely free of cost for 3 years, right? The first cohort. So I can say that if you want to seek the education, if you want to make yourself aware, there are opportunities. But the question is, are there enough interests to make yourself educated? Because the culture is deeply, very much related with whatever threatens integrity. I have seen betting is a big market in Africa. I have seen across Uganda when I was traveling, I have seen all these big betting companies and billboards, and I really don't know how do you separate that within a culture that is so integrated in it. So I'm really intrigued to know how we are going to do it. So education alone cannot do it. And here comes my second point, that we need a change of culture, change of perspective, change of mindset. It's not only the awareness that's gonna do the job. And the third thing is creating a framework, not by the policies and the governance or mechanisms by the federations, but also within the social system, creating a network of practitioners who can support each other, who can build through and who can push through the things together, people who want to do the right thing. And I have seen many of them. I would say most of the people I have met in Africa and I have known in Africa, they want to do the right thing. There is a lot of passion people put in this game, a lot of themselves that they invest in this game. So everyone wants to make the game right, but they don't know how to. But first, if we can create this structure, we can have more resources attracted to Africa, we can have more investment, we can have a robust culture. And that's the long term or the second phase. But just to summarize and understand the key perspective and the key dynamics, that we can say a lot that should be done, that could be done, but we actually have to walk the talk if something has to be done.
Definitely, we have to put in the work. It's not just about the talking. And yes, if you're just joining us, it's still the SIGA Integrity Week session powered by Initiative for Development through Sports IDS. And you can drop your questions in the chat box. We are advancing conversations with the panelists and look into the chat box to take some questions from you who are joining us today. So put in your question there. There's also a poll, which I'm sure you can see pop up on your screen. You can attend to that also. Thank you, Fahmida, for your response. And you definitely have laid the foundation for the next question, which has something to do with collaboration and capacity building. And this question goes to Khayran. It says, capacity building is key to ensuring effectiveness of integrity measures. We all believe and agree with that. How can African sports organizations and governments then work to build more robust legal and investigative frameworks at the national level, especially in countries with limited resources? And I know Fahmida rightly mentioned that resources might be limited, but then that should not limit our creativity in working around these things and achieving the best in terms of integrity. Khayran, you have the floor.
Yeah. Thank you, Sayo. And I think, to be honest, Fahmida's kind of tackled this issue well when she was talking about the education part. But I think capacity building is essential, again, as you've said, in ensuring effectiveness of integrity measures in Africa. However, we must address the issue that comes with the tension between sports autonomy and political interference when it comes to sports governing bodies and government institutions. Because we find most of the time this causes a significant barrier to collaboration, often leading to corruption and weakened governance. We have the governments trying to, or rather, how would I put this without sounding controversial? Most of the time, you find sports governing bodies and governments, they have a clash where the government want to insert or show the superiority when it comes to this is what this is our country, this is how we run things. We also put money in sports through our development fund. But then again, we have the sports governing bodies coming in where they want to safeguard the autonomy and say it should be independent from political interference. We want the experts and we know how to run the sport. So this most of the time brings a lack of cooperation and resulting in a power struggle. And I think ultimately it hampers the development and ethical governance of sports. But I think it's important to find a balance. And we've seen this in many countries that they've done this and it's been successful. For example, I'll just mention this. I think with discretion, for the SAIDS, which is the South Africa Institute of Drug-Free Sport, which is the anti-doping body in South Africa, has collaborated with the law enforcement to curb doping, and this is done through tackling drug-related busts. Although, according to my source, it's been an effective tool. However, the success rate has not been very high. I think only 2 or 3 cases that have been successful so far. We also have Rwanda, which have collaborated with WADA through the project called, maybe just to be specific, allow me to refer to the exact name of it. It's called Athlete Support Personnel, ASP, which Rwanda are now including coaches, trainers, doctors, and officials. They do, they have studies and knowledge and research addressing critical gaps in doping in the country. They provide essential data for stakeholders like the Ministry of Sports and anti-doping organization to improve the prevention strategies and promote clean sport in Rwanda. So I think, again, this is mainly for Africa, but then there's Norway, Australia, Japan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia. We've seen even the government coming in to develop and insert money into the sport and promote sustainability and development. But I mean, it's crucial to just generally say this. When sports and governing bodies and government work together on these initiatives and balancing the autonomy with necessary governmental oversight, they can strengthen the overall integrity of sports sector, ensuring fair play, sustainability, and transparency. And just to wrap up, again, I want to just add on to that. I think also establishing national integrity units with sports governing bodies or sports organization, units that collaborate across borders. They share expertise, good practice, create a more coordinated, effective approach to integrity enforcement. Programs that focus on education, as Fahmida has said, equipping officials, coaches, athletes with necessary skills to identify and combat integrity breaches. And through seeking funding, because I know most of the time we're faced with lack of resources, again, because of not enough funding from either international organization or even the government officials. I think this is something that can be can really help in develop robust mechanism for monitoring and enforcement. I don't know if I make sense because I just rumbled on that point, but I think
very, very valid
a lot
points.
of
Thank you.
information, and I don't think we can be able to cover everything together. But I think I hope I just kind of was able to summarize that part.
Thank you so much, Khayran. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. And more than anything, you even touched on the question I was going to throw at the next panelist. So I'll just move him to another question. And that's in summary talking about, especially when you mentioned the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, and how countries need to position to partner some of these international organizations. They usually go a long way in helping with the whole capacity building, which is informal education. Capacity building is basically, education, but an informal level and short and sharp, more concise, way to do things. So thank you so much for mentioning some of those initiatives in Rwanda and the other countries down there in East Africa. I'll move to the next question now for Jeremiah. So I'll move Owolabi to another question. So Owolabi should position for that. But for Jeremiah, and this time it's about international cooperation. African sports are often heavily influenced by external commercial interests. And I'm sure you know that, especially from your playing days, and even now that you're, a football agent. How do you balance the growth of the sports industry with the need to protect its integrity, especially with... Is it Oye that is the football agent? No, I'm mixing names up. Sorry. So it's Owolabi that should answer this question.
Exactly.
To protect its integrity, especially with regards to sponsorship and media rights. You are conversant with that to a certain level. Let's talk about that. How do we balance the growth? Because the money stares the guys in the face and they begin to throw caution to the wind when it comes to integrity. How do we balance this out and with the growth of the sports on the continent?
Actually, the thing is, when we talk about sponsorship is something like you are putting your money into something and you are expecting something better. So in a situation where you are a sponsorship company is putting a lot of money, investing a lot of money in a particular sport in Africa, and at the end of the day, there is a situation of match fixing, a situation of fans invading. There's a situation where you find out that players' welfare are not being taken care of, like it happened with SuperSport sponsoring Nigerian Premier League at some point in Nigeria here. SuperSport got to realize that players are not being well paid. The welfare of players are not being well taken care of. Transportation. They got to realize that the governing body of the Nigerian Premier League were just extorting on the money being sent to promote the Nigerian Premier League. SuperSport had to withdraw their sponsorship from the Nigerian Premier League. That's a very good example, just down here in Nigeria, how sponsorship means a lot to sports in Africa, and how the integrity of sports means a lot to the sponsors, because you can't put your money on something that at the end of the day, now you put your money on something that at the end of the day you are not proud of. So in Africa, we have to really work on stuff like this. Because when I want to speak, most times when I like to speak, I like to give very good example of what happens down here in Africa, a little bit of experience that I've experienced. And this is a question that actually I wasn't expecting, but I want to now expatiate on the integrity of African sports, linking them back to FIFA. Just like Khayran already spoke about, she spoke about capacity building. I've gotten to realize capacity is very, very important. She spoke about the World Anti-Doping Agency, working with them. She spoke about what happens in Rwanda. That is very, 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 very informative of her. I give her kudos for that. But I will actually want to speak about information sharing. Information sharing is something that is very, very big. CAF should actually work on that, because I would like to give an example of a coach here in Nigeria. I don't want to mention too much of his names or give too much stuff for people to know him, but he has been to Olympics more than twice. He has been investigated for match fixing at international level. And then his license had to be withdrawn. I just imagine if it was just under CAF. I can tell you vividly, absolutely, that nothing would have happened. But it happened at the FIFA level, and everything that was supposed to happen happened to him. That is how important that we have to take sport laws in Africa, so that FIFA too can take us very, very serious. If it were to be in the Nigerian Premier League or in the CAF level, bribery, corruption, what and whatnot, I'm very sure that coach will still be coaching by now. I can tell you vividly, he was the former Super Eagles coach. But he participated in match fixing at the FIFA level, and FIFA never joked with it. So for me, I think CAF should be more effective on information sharing down to FIFA. When you hear something, share it with FIFA. Let them think about it. Let them bring their investigators. Let them bring their personnel to pass the right judgment on this. And also, when we are investigating, we should cooperate with international people like the Interpol, like the United Nations. In the United Nations did something of late. The football for the goals, stuff. Yeah, aware about that. Yeah, so stuff like that. CAF, African countries should participate in stuff like this. FIFA will look at us and be like, oh no, you guys, they mean business, and they will actually give us more recognition. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Oyelayo. I'll go to Farida now, and we're talking grassroots and still on education. Building a culture of integrity at the grassroots level is crucial for long-term success, I believe. How can we integrate integrity, education, and ethical decision-making into the training of young athletes and coaches? You can take that, and I'm sure Jeremiah can come in also based on his experience as a coach. So both of you can double up on this. But we'll start with Fahmida.
So I would mention two things over here. Number one are the educational resources that are available online, especially WADA has, for when it comes to anti-doping, WADA has their educational learning platform called ADEL. It's free of cost. Anyone can go and get a certification and can learn. IOC has Athlete 365, which is also an online free of cost certification platform where people can go and learn. We have Council of Europe. There is this specific program called HELP, H-E-L-P, HELP. It's focusing on the legal governance and the corruption and a lot of integrity issues in sports, right? There are UNODC, Interpol, and a lot of international organization level efforts. There are UNESCO has been doing a lot of work. I was in Paris just 2 months ago for the Change the Game conference, where a lot of these topics were taking the front line.
Yeah.
The understanding and awareness and the knowledge is growing. It's still evolving. But I particularly think, in my opinion, what is missing is the contextual knowledge, because there is one side which is global knowledge, but when you try to fit the African context in the global knowledge, that is where your experience or expertise as a coach or as a practitioner really comes in hand, right? And this is where I think Jeremiah can add and share more on his thoughts as a coach. And I think young athletes or any younger person or children, they actually learn not by education or reading books, they learn by example. So it's very important to have the coaches educated and behave in the way that complies with integrity, because that is how the young athletes are going to learn about integrity, through the example, through the modeling to them. So on one end, education awareness, it's important from a younger age. This is how the value system is going to grow. This is important. But regardless, what is more important is to have that role model in front of them, which is oftentimes for the younger player is the coach. And that is why it's so, I cannot stress this enough. This is so pivotal at this moment to create that culture of integrity, where it's not about the cup, it's not about winning at all cost. It's about integrity that comes first. So once we see that practice to be changed, that would hugely create that subconscious level education, not just the conscious education through the curriculum, but also the subconscious education through our regular practices. Because let's face it, integrity is inside us. It's not something that we can touch or feel, right? So it has to be absorbed within us, and we have to create a system that can help us to absorb.
Thank you so much, Fahmida. And definitely, like you rightly mentioned, Jeremiah must have a say on this, because from the point of young athletes, which he's dealing with his academy, and also from the point of a coach, how do we integrate education and ethical decision-making into the training of young athletes and coaches? Jeremiah.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to talk about this question. When she was talking, I was just smiling. Honestly, when you're talking about integrity, sports, educating athletes, it all starts basically from the grassroots. Education and educating athletes and stakeholders on integrity. And we'll be talking about the levels. We have the grassroots level, we have the elite level, and we have the stakeholders. Now, talking about the grassroots level, that's integrity workshops and seminars for coaches and athletes to educate them on the need to have integrity when it comes to sport. We also have to incorporate ethics and ethics into sports and curriculum in schools and in other parts. We don't just teach PE in schools. We should make them know this, the ethics in sport, we need to incorporate it into our curriculum. We have to ensure programs like coach and mentor education programs. Like for the kids that I coach, the academy I have, we make them pick mentors on their own. Though they might not see these mentors, they might be international stars, which they go, they read about them, watch videos about them. So we need to ensure this happens, coach and mentor education program. We need to also educate our parents. The parents of this athlete needs to be informed also. If I'm a parent and I'm properly informed, no matter how a coach is trying to manipulate my child to cheat, to do any form of cheating when it comes to sport, I won't accept that. Because many of the coaches will tell you the game about all those corruption when it comes to sport, but they won't tell you the negative aspects of it.
True.
When Finn was talking, the FIFA agent was talking, talked about the Nigerian coach that was banned for some years because of the match fixing and all.
Yeah.
The parents of these athletes are carried along, and the coach is trying to influence their child negatively. The parents won't agree because of the negativity that has to do with it. So we also have to carry out community outreaches, make people see sports is a big business. We don't just think it starts and ends on the pitch or on the track. No, it doesn't. We have a lot to do. Now, talking about we should make it mandatory for integrity education program for all elite athletes to undergo an integrity education program. So that at the end of the day, if you are caught, you won't say, I don't know. There's a general saying, ignorance is not an excuse in the court of law. So you need to be informed so that you know where you stand at the end of the day. So we also have to look at anti-corruption and match fixing workshops, regular briefings on emerging threats, collaborate with international organizations like WADA, like Fahmida talked about WADA, IOC and the likes, and encourage ambassador programs. Now, the last side where I'm going to talk about is stakeholder education. Administrators and officials have to be trained properly. A lot of administrators and officials in our sport bodies today, especially in Africa, are politicians. A lot of them don't know much about sport. They just do the politics aspect where you bring in money, we use it as we want, and sports is just one-sided. We should get to that level where we know that where we should know that sport is not to be placed one-sided. So we need to educate the stakeholders. Also, there should also be media and broadcasting ethic workshop. The media has a role to play in this. It's not all about coming to interview sportsmen about their success in sports. They should also help us put out jingles out there talking about integrity in sport. And lastly, also referee and umpires and officials, that's technical officials, have to go through the same programs whereby they should understand the gains of true integrity and the rules of integrity in sport also. So let me not talk too much on that, but I think at elite level, as stakeholders level, and as grassroots level, we need to take it serious, especially the education aspect. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeremiah. Valid points indeed as regards stakeholders education, and that's something here on the question, and I think you just knocked it off, talking about the media, so we have here media fans, also civil society. So everybody has a role to play, and I particularly like what you said about the parents also being involved in these things. We know one of the biggest challenge when it comes to integrity on the continent is 8 great competitions. You see older people there, and that's something that parents can play a role, because definitely if you see a son or daughter of yours who is well in his 20s or her 20s playing at an under 17 8 grade competition, then you should call that out and not even let it happen in the first place. So parents definitely play a critical role in this. Let's bring this all home now, and like we started with a question that everyone responded to, let's take this final one where everyone would share their thoughts, and it's about future gazing. It says, looking ahead, what are the most critical steps African countries should take to create a truly sustainable culture of integrity in sports? Are there any successful models or best practices from other regions that you believe we could adopt on the continent? So I'll just allow you to take maybe 3 points at the max. And if it's just one you have or two, it's fine. But 3 points maximum to respond to this question. And every of the panelists would respond to this. And it says, what are the most critical steps we should take as Africans to create a truly sustainable culture of
I think we lost Sayo, his connection for a bit.
I think we lost Shayo. I thought the network was on my end. I was trying to sort it out here too.
Maybe Fahmida, you can go ahead.
Yeah, maybe I think we got the gist of the question, that what are the things to do in the coming days. I think first of all, we really have to focus on the existing efforts and initiatives, and have to, based on those initiatives, we can say that what are the things to be done. CAF has been working in the space of safeguarding, or safe sport has been working relentlessly on this area. We have seen the president, Patrice Motsepe, also recently have endorsed the CAF safeguarding effort under the Protect the Game campaign. And this has gained momentum, like safeguarding or safe sport is gaining momentum. But however, when it comes to integrity, in terms of the other areas such as match fixing, match manipulation, betting, and anti-doping, these are the things yet to be addressed with a robust mechanism. But I think integrity in Africa came quite a late manner to popularize the concept, particularly because my experience with Africa is that this is a continent with such rich culture, heritage, and humanity. I mean, Africa, we have seen from the history of Timbuktu to the all these recent years, we have seen that this is a region which embraces people with warmth, with hospitality, with openness. And the culture of transparency or honesty is actually something that comes to the Africans as a second nature, I would say. I mean, and this is coming from someone who has been born and raised in Asia. And I would say you would see more pickpockets in the streets of Paris than in streets of Rabat, for example. You would not have any single incident of such. I mean, at least last 2 years being here, I haven't had any bad experience, whereas I have had many experience like that in other continents. So I would say from a very general and genuine point of view, Africa has a culture of honesty and helpfulness. Now, problems exist in every society, in every continent. But what I'm trying to say is that how do we overcome those problems depends on us. So how we can be proactive, it starts with us and it goes with us. I think initiatives like this, which SIGA regularly does through the online webinar and free of cost webinars, which brings together the expertise. These are the good resources to look into. And reaching out to people who can be supportive in the similar areas are also very important. But what's the most important thing over here to look forward to is to equip and educate ourselves so that we know that we are prepared once the situation arises, right? So that we don't have to call fire brigade. Let's all be the first aid practitioners. Let's gear ourselves up with our first aid kits so that we don't have to go until the hospital. We can at least tackle the things on our side, right? I'm based in Morocco, and Morocco is hosting the next 5 editions of FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup, which means that the country has quite a lot to do in terms of safe sport, which is one of the major area that I specialize in. And I would like to conclude that by saying that we have seen that the women's team of Morocco, and the women's national team of Morocco, playing in the top 16 of the Women's World Cup in Australia and New Zealand, has done tremendous progress. In fact, the first ever Arab women's nation to go ahead with this kind of excellence. But what is more concerning for me, after we have seen that the sanction of the Spanish president and the accomplice safeguarding concern, the head coach has been hired to be the head coach of the women's national team of Morocco. So someone who has been fired in Spain for a safeguarding concern has been hired in Morocco. I am not sure how far are we actually practicing what we are preaching. So coming from a very open and new, maybe I'm not updated as of now if he's still the head coach, but I would be very much happy to see someone with due integrity and with a clean record to assume such important positions. And I think that's where the challenge is. And that's what we have to overcome, that we can have all the policies, we can set up the best practices, we can host the World Cups of the World Cups, but are we winning the World Cup of integrity? That's the question. And that's the question we all have to ask ourselves every day.
All right, thank you so much for me. The thought-provoking indeed. Definitely, I was shocked when I heard about the appointment of the former coach, which you just mentioned. But then, someday, we definitely will get it right. Jeremiah is smiling. I don't know if Khayran has taken a response. I was locked up a bit. If she hasn't, you have the floor, Khayran.
Yeah. According to the sequence, I think Fahmida went first, and then I would.
No, not a problem.
Yeah. I think for me, I would really like to emphasize on good leadership. I cannot say this enough, because I think good leadership is key. It drives the enforcement and implementation of the regulations designed to benefit sports and its development. Again, hand in hand, strict accountability. I've mentioned this earlier, we've all talked about this. Where stakeholders who fail to meet standards, along with effective monitoring, evaluation, and adoption of best practices. This is the way forward to ensure progress and compliance, because you can have the best policies, you can have the best regulations in place in paper, whatever mode you have them. But if you do not have proper, competent, ethical leaders in place, the whole system fails. It's like having a very good car, but then the road has potholes and the driver is drunk. You will not have a safe journey. So for me, I would say that would be my main emphasis on this. And in terms of best practices, and I apologize in advance for using countries that might not exactly relate to Africa, but Australia has this body called the National Integrity Framework, which emphasizes education, independent oversight, and a comprehensive anti-doping strategies. Alongside, there's Norway that also emphasizes on ethical practices, grassroots development, and athlete welfare, which is also another a good example of integrating integrity with sports development. And I think in a way, again, we say we need to educate ourselves, we need to have capacity building. This is one way where we can also adopt these approaches, learn from the people who've put these measures in place and they've done well in it considerably, and see how we can tailor make them to the African context, because many people also make the mistake of borrowing or copy pasting policies or regulations, say from the international world or countries that are much more developed, and bringing them to Africa where they do not exactly apply immediately. We need to have the right resources. We need to have the proper measures in place to make sure that these regulations that we borrow from these other countries can now be reflected and be implemented in our own countries. So I think that would be one way to help foster transparency, accountability, and sustainable sports ecosystem in the continent.
Thanks a lot, Khayran. Very, very well said. Quickly, Jeremiah, before we take away Elijah, we have questions in the chat box that I would also like us to attend to. So let's quickly just touch on this. Jeremiah, you have the floor.
All right. Thank you very much, Sayo. I think Khayran and Fahmida have done a very, very good job, and have really talked well on this aspect. Now, just break mine into two aspects: the short term and the long term. Now, the short term, we should develop and implement national sports integrity policies relating to individual countries. Like what Khayran just said now, we should not just do a copy and paste, bring policies that won't work in Africa. We should develop and implement international sports integrity policies. Two, we should establish independent sports integrity commissions. If we keep allowing the government to be in this, then it will be difficult for it to work. That's just the truth. We should establish independent sports integrity commission. These are part of my short term. Then also introduce integrity education programs for athletes, officials, and administrators, like I talked about before. Also, we should enhance transparency in sports governance and finance. There should be transparency. If a sponsorship deal comes, it should be on the white paper for everybody to see how it's been done.
The figures, yeah.
Figures and all what came in, how they intend to spend it, and so on and so forth. Also, we should strengthen partnership with international organizations, part of my short-term goals. Then for my long-term, we should embed integrity into national sports development strategy. We should embed it. It should be part of it. Integrity should be part of it. In our national sport development strategy, integrity should be key part of it. Also, we should invest in grassroots sports where I belong. I always want to talk about grassroots sports. We should invest in grassroots sports development programs. Because if we invest in it, when we catch them young and these kids know about all of these things on integrity, then it will work well later in the future because they are already trained in this. Then we should promote athlete welfare and support services. Like what Fahmida talked about, athlete welfare is key. We should promote it. Now, what international organizations do when athletes go for competition before they pay their associations the so-called money they're supposed to get? But now athletes are being paid directly to their account because of all these financial integrity issues. Athletes are paid to their account. So also we should foster positive and cultural and community engagement. Let there be cultural and community engagement, talking about integrity in everything we do, especially when it has to do with sport. Then lastly, develop African-specific integrity training programs. She talked about something, Khayran talked about something. It's not about copying policies and pasting them. We should develop African-specific integrity training programs that will work for us. Sometimes what works in Europe might not necessarily work here in Africa, but we know where we are. We know what works for us, so we should develop ours. So now just talk about some successful models that have worked in other countries and best practices. Australia's National Sport Integrity Commission, I think we should study that in Africa. We should also study the UK Sports Integrity Unit, the Germany Federal Ministry of Interior Sports Integrity Program. We should also look at Singapore Sports Integrity Division. They are doing a very good job. Then lastly, International Olympic Committee. That is the mother of them all. When it comes to integrity, I believe we should follow these models and try to do what we work here in Africa for us. So that's my take on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Very comprehensive indeed. Oyelayo, quick one on your thoughts for the final question. Do we still have Oyelayo here? Okay, while we wait for him, let's take questions from the chat box. And I believe you can hear me, and anyone can just jump on this. It says, if we are being practical, and this is from Njane Ndungu, and I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce it right. I hope I'm right. If we are being practical, sports is not at the top agenda of many African governments. Accordingly, it requires persons involved in the sports sector to push African sports federations to involve themselves in lobbying for political consideration until the politics work hand in hand. That's with the sports agenda, protecting integrity in African sports. The pace of growth and development will be very, very slow. So anyone can answer this, and I believe this is like an intersection between sports and politics. And we keep hearing you should separate sports from politics, and we definitely know, especially on the African continent and the world over, actually, when you dig into the background of some of the guys who are seated at the top of the top, there is a political leaning to it. Can this be separated, or how best can it be tuned and there is really no friction? Anyone can answer this.
Sorry,
Anyone?
Sayo,
Yes.
can you repeat the question? I didn't get, my network was funny.
Okay, so this person was talking about how there's a need to lobby federations, especially if you're not, that is required because of political will. So the person is asking that how do we then protect the integrity of the sports and the pace of growth and development if that is the case, that you need to now wear a political toga to ensure that your budgets are out. One of the funny things we say here is approval is different from release. So you can get an approval from the office of the director general, for example, but that fund may not be released. And there may be a few things that will be compromised along the way. So this person is saying, what are our thoughts on that as regards the thin line between politics and sports?
Okay, if I will delve into this a bit, if I understand the question very well, I think involving board members as board members in our sports organizations or sport associations will help solve this problem. I don't want to mention names here, but there are some top government functionaries that are in some sports association here in Nigeria, and those associations currently are working perfectly well. Because if funds are being released by the government and some of the dignitaries and these people in politics and government try to shortchange the associations, and we have some of those politicians in, I'm not saying they should come and be the president, but they should just come be the board members so they can see what is happening in those associations and they will see the true need of funds. When some of those their colleagues try to cut down on the budget or the funds released, these people can help solve the situation. I don't want to mention him, like I said, but there are some big government functionaries now in sport associations here in Nigeria that even give out from their own pocket to assist sports associations. So I believe we could, if we can bring them into sports organizations as board members, then it will help us reduce the aspect of limitation in funding and other corruption we face or experience when it comes to funding and sports in Africa. Let them be in the picture, then they will understand what it is. The ones that we have seen that are in the picture already are already seeing why it's not cut budgets. They already see why the sportsmen and the association need more money to function. So I believe if we bring them in, not them being at the aim of affair there in government and not in the association, let's bring them as board members. And I believe that will work for us and eradicate or reduce these issues we are having with funding and corruption. Thank you.
If I may add just
all right, thank you.
Perspective.
Okay, Fahmida, go on.
I think sports is the smaller reflection of the bigger society that we live in. Where there is money, there is power, there is problem, right? So sports these days we are not playing just recreational sport, we are playing competitive sport. Competitive sports means there is a big amount of money involved. When there is money involved, there is power dynamic, and people, corruption, all of these kind of things are going to happen. I will just ask if anyone has any idea that how much it costs to run for a federation president position, to run for the presidential election of a football federation, for example, right? And I'm not just specifically saying for Africa, I'm saying for everywhere. So we are talking about powerful people, powerful positions, and how can we talk about power without politics? It does not make sense. It does not go hand in hand, okay? Now, I actually specialize in a field which is called sport diplomacy. And sport diplomacy helps to create a better synergy rather than having a bit of those power play. And it helps with, I would say, to better structure this power dynamic in a way. I'm trying to say that we cannot completely eliminate politics from sport. It can never happen. It would be an utopia. It would be a utopia to dream. We cannot ever eliminate the power struggle that comes with it. It would be there, but how can we effectively manage it in a diplomatic way, in a way so that meritocracy is being valued when it comes to governance, administration, and leadership? We can educate the next generation of leaders and can create qualified leadership. That way, that is the only way we can eliminate corrupted leadership. And I think Khayran talked about the importance of good leadership. And importance of good leadership means qualified people has to come and step in. And the question is Africa building enough qualified managers, administrators in the field of sport, who understand sport, who understand not just the well-being of the athletes, but also well-being of the game and the reputation and the goodwill and everything that comes with it.
Valid points indeed, Fahmida, especially when you talked about what it takes to become a federation president. It's a 4-year cycle in Nigeria. I'm sure Jeremiah is conversant with. Every 4 years, I think we have one coming up next year again. It's always dramatic, to say the least. So, valid points indeed. Let's take this question. Interesting one from Jensen Van Kellen, and it says, if frameworks can be transferred due to cultural differences, should the frameworks be adjusted, or should we adjust our culture?
I'll take this one.
Twice. And I'd like to wrap this 10 minutes. We've touched on the 90-minute mark, time, like we say, football.
Yeah.
Go on, Khayran.
Yes, so I think that borrows from what I was trying to say earlier. It's unfair and almost impossible to say culture should change to accommodate regulation. I think it should work the other way around, because when you talk about, I mean, we live in an international space and sports is international and touches globally, where we have different cultures, languages, stereotypes, biases that comes with that. It's impossible to expect the whole of Asia to change their culture to accommodate a regulation that comes from Europe, or accommodate. Africa on its own has diverse cultures. So you can imagine how that would, I mean, like Fahmida says, it's impossible. In Kenya, we have over, I think, 40 tribes, with each one of them having their different cultures. So I think the law should be accommodated to sort of be either neutral or sort of a standard across the board, or be adapted to, I don't know, just create a balance, because I mean, it's irrational to expect culture to change, because that's not going to happen. And this is exactly what I was saying with the copy-pasting mechanism, because laws that have work elsewhere, even if it's in the same global south countries, cannot apply in other countries in tandem. It has to be adapted. It has to look at what are the resources in place, what are the culture implications, what stereotypes do we have, languages itself, because not all countries, I mean, even in Africa, not all countries speak the same language. We have French, we have English. I mean, if you're talking about the formal international languages, we have French, English, Arabic, at least maybe Portuguese in a few countries, Spanish, but then I mean it's unheard of. So I don't know if it's a mix, but I think it's a much of balance and adapting and tailor making it to serve the people that it should be, because you cannot enforce a law on me that I don't understand. It has to apply to me. I have to know how I'm benefiting from it. I have to know how. I mean, if I'm told, okay, today, for example, I mean, I know this is a very controversial area, but when you talk about the LGBTQ movement, in Africa, we're still not there yet. Yeah, I mean, Africa, in most cases, not just Africa, but other countries in terms of religion, culture, and all that, all the other implications, we sometimes lag behind when it comes to adopting to international, international standards, because we know also sports is very dynamic. Every day, every year, we have different regulations coming on board with different factors coming in terms of culture. So it has to be given some sort of education behind it for people to understand. We have to accept that this is something that is happening in our culture, to be able for us to also understand why these laws should come in and be implemented and be integrated into our systems. So I think maybe just to use that as an example, because in most countries also we know LGBTQ is illegal. Our neighbors in Uganda being I don't know what's the politically correct term to use, but being a homosexual or gay is illegal. I mean, you get jail time for that for life. So when you want to now say an athlete has the right to participate, but then you're talking about an athlete who in their own country is deemed to be sort of a criminal, because why else would you be putting in jail when I've done nothing wrong? Yeah. So, I mean, just to put into context, what goes into integrating, tailor-making, and making culture-sensitive laws and regulation to be applicable to everyone. So culture should not change, but laws should be made to adapt to culture.
All right, thank you, Khayran. Let's take our final question. This one from Edna, who says, "Thank you for having this critical conversation. Is there any focus on research in sports integrity issues in Africa? This might help in decision making, especially when it comes to recommendations for policy and practice." And I think this is a very good question. Any research ongoing? Anyone planned just to help us shape this in terms of policies and practice? Anyone?
I think I can start off with a question. Very timely and very important question, because there's a big data that is missing. There is a huge amount of data that's missing in not just Africa, Asia, Latin America. It's also because the research that requires to be done, or the funding that needs to be done, is not quite focused on these regions. So in my understanding and knowledge, there are many collaborative research that are being done, like a lot of European researchers who are taking a comparative analysis or context, especially like the Sport University of Cologne in Germany, or the Norway, the Oslo School of Public Health, and also like there are many European universities who are focused on this area. There are two major master's program. One is called Goals, another is called MACI. Since we are doing the sports ethics and integrity, the Masters in Sports Ethics and Integrity MACI program is fully funded by the European Union, and they have the scholarship provided, especially focusing on the countries of Global South, 2 years of education and research opportunity in Europe. And I think it's particularly important for people from Global South to get into these kind of platforms, because if we do not share our expertise or do not invest our effort to identify the issues of our regions, no one else will do it effectively. And there is a big amount of data that would go missing, which is currently the case. So I strongly suggest for Francophone speakers in Africa, they should look for this safe sport safe sport research working group in University of Laval in Canada. They also have a strong dedicated research group led by a famous researcher called Sylvia Parent. And they are hosting these kind of gatherings, research symposiums next year also. So there are many research opportunities, but unfortunately not a lot of participation from people from Asia or Africa, which is why our voices go missing. And this is time for our researchers, for our practitioners to change that and bring forward these approaches. Thanks.
Thank you, and it's a good place to anchor this ship this beautiful afternoon in Lagos, whatever time it is anywhere else. Thank you to everyone who has joined us. Thank you most especially to our esteemed panelists, erudite, savvy in what they do, and they brought that to the fore this afternoon. Fahmida, Faiza, the founder of Alliance for Safe Space. Thank you so much. Khayran, Noor, the international sports law consultant. Jeremiah Haruna is a coach. He says he's a sports coach, not just athletics and soccer coach for the Nigerian Customs Service. And finally, Owolabi, a FIFA licensed football agent and an entrepreneur who runs a soccer agency. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for being part of this. We've been talking about building a culture of integrity, strengthening sports laws and regulation in Africa as part of the SIGA week. That's the Sports Integrity Global Alliance week for the year 2024 with our hosting partner, the Initiative for Development Through Sports, and that's under the leadership of Adeola, who put all of us here together in this room. In wrapping up this afternoon, I would like to take this quote from Brené Brown, which says, integrity is choosing courage over comfort, choosing what is right over what is fun, fast, or easy, and choosing to practice our values rather than simply professing them. And that is the most important thing in all. Let's not just pay lip service to it. Let's not just talk about it. Most importantly, let's get to practice what we're professing. It's louder that way, as they say that action speaks louder than words. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks to our panelists. It's been the SIGA Sports Integrity Week 2024, and we definitely would catch you next year. Thank you, and bye for now.